Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome back to another episode of Second and Saints. I almost fumbled the intro, man. You have it, Josh Jackson here with myself, John Hendricks. Man, what a mess! What a mess
Yeah,
tonight was. Well, it's technically what 1:20 in the morning on
yeah,
Friday, but golly, this game sucked. I mean, it was bad.
that was
It
rough.
is probably one of the worst ones I've sat through in I don't know. I can't come to mind to think of one. Like I know 21 was bad for a lot of
Yeah,
reasons, but golly, this was just awful. Like,
yeah, yeah. It's one thing when you're in a situation where you're dealing with like a bunch of COVID absences and stuff like that, and you're like three deep all the way across the roster. But this is a game that was still a lot of draft picks, still a lot of free agent signings, like these guys that weren't just like elevated. I think it was that Ian Book game. There were like a couple positions, or maybe it was only one, but I know there was like a position where somebody was like signed the same day or something like that, and then had to play everything. That wasn't this, right? Like this was a short week of practice, but still you had practice, you had everybody together, all this other stuff, and then you come out there and you lay an egg with the exception of a field goal and a garbage time touchdown. Like, oh man.
yeah, I mean, and look, it's I think when you look at this game and you see in the locker room, like I guess for starters, I appreciated that the leaders were around to talk.
Hmm.
Alvin Kamara keeps it real,
Yep.
and he obviously had said a couple of comments saying, look, he'd never seen the Superdome clear out like that in 8 years he's played here, and obviously, if he was a fan, he'd be fed up too. And the thing is,
Hmm.
he also said some of the guys there, it's like they played flat. And he's like,
Hmm.
it wasn't just it wasn't Thursday night football, it was just a Thursday game. Is how
Right.
they came out and played. Like that was pretty telling in my opinion. I mean, shoot, you could just pick an area. This team was just a mess. They were
Yeah.
a tragedy. I mean, this was just a train wreck. I mean, it doesn't matter how you label it. It was bad. Offensively,
Yeah.
they couldn't get anything going. Defensively, they still couldn't tackle. They still couldn't stop some things. It just and of course, Dennis Allen says they couldn't play complementary football. And we've talked plenty about when
Hmm.
they can't do that, they can't win. And so, um, look, I don't even know where you go to start breaking down a loss like this. I mean, it's all bad, but kind of your initial thoughts on how bad this travesty was tonight.
Yeah, I think you have to start where everybody wants to start right now, and it's the coach.
Yeah,
Like where do you go from here? And look, I think you and I are on the same boat that I don't think the Saints make any coaching changes in season. That's just
no,
not just doesn't feel like something that
it's
they
not happening.
do.
No.
But I think you have to have the conversation in the off season about where you go next, because I don't know how you sell another year of this. I made the evaluation over on Locked On Saints. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I made the evaluation that when it comes to who Dennis Allen is as a head coach, trying to be as fair as possible, that the absolute best that he's going to give you is an average season, a 9-8 season. And then what you need is a roster that can outperform that in order to get more wins. As we discussed over the course of the offseason, from my perspective, this team did not get better at any single position at all over the course of this offseason. The one that I would make the argument for is uh, maybe edge rusher, because you added Chase Young and all these other things, and then potentially linebacker with the addition of Willie Gay. But outside of those two additions, I don't know that this team got better anywhere else. So I don't think that they have a roster that can outperform the ceiling of its head coach, right? And so when you have sort of that mixture, you're going to end up with an average at best to below average season, or average at best to below average set of results each time. And I know results are not the focus, according to General Manager Mickey Loomis, but at some point they have to be, right? And so that's the way that I kind of look at where this team is, just trying to be as fair as possible. I mean, you got a 34% win percentage at coach, which is the lowest amongst active head coaches in the NFL, and all those other things. I think that that's just one of those things that you kind of have to look at and say, okay, well, this is something that you absolutely have to address over the course of the offseason. And it can't just be that. You have to do more. Don't get me wrong. But I think that's the place everybody wants to start.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, look, this is part of my post game column on Saints News Network. I didn't really hold back too much, but this is a results based business, and we've talked about this. We have talked about this and we talked about on our game preview. Like, this is a thing where you're expected to win in this league. Doesn't matter what you're going through, and I get it. The injuries, they have sucked, and they have
Oh man,
told
yeah.
on this team, but conversely, your depth should be better. You should have,
Mhm.
not saying you should have planned for injuries, but this is why you do the scouting. This is why you have player personnel. This is why you have do all these things so that if your starter goes down, you can have somebody that's at least capable or can step in. Like, they're going what, 4 centers now? You know what I mean? Like, it's just
Mhm.
going to every area that they've had roster issues. And you talked about how they didn't necessarily get better. I think wide receiver was a concern of ours. You know,
Mhm.
think cornerback, maybe I'd say that they got a little bit better because of the way Alontae Taylor played in training camp and then adding Kool-Aid
Yeah,
McKinnon.
it's fair.
I think that's probably one area that I might add. But look, we've said this since day one of this Clint Kubiak offense. If you don't have an offensive line, excuse me, you don't have an offense, right? And we're seeing that on the field. And then defensively, the trenches, like it was
Mhm.
concern. You mentioned it, and you said this I think last week when we broke down the loss about the interior being a real concern. And it's just the job's not getting done. The
Yep.
pressure not getting home. Even when you are getting pressure, you're not finishing the play out. Like, anything and everything that could have went wrong for this team tonight was all out on display. And when you talk about, again, I don't get the sense that there's any type of in-season coaching changes that are going to be made, at least from a Dennis Allen perspective. Now, could
Mhm.
somebody else be thrown under the bus? Sure. But
Sure.
after this, where do you go? You know, it's like you can embrace a rebuild. You can do something like, whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter. Like, you're getting what you kind of hoped you weren't getting, I guess, in some aspects.
Mhm.
It's like mediocrity or average or whatever the case may be. And of course, you're only going to be as good as what the talent level is. But all of these issues that we have seen this team face goes back to coaching. Like, it
Mhm.
just does. And so something's not getting said, something's getting lost in translation, all these different things. Something is really wrong here. And I don't know how you can say going into next year, like you said, this is the same product we're going to roll out. Like, you
Yeah.
just basically took the product you had last year and just slapped a new label on it and said, here you go.
Yeah. And
Like,
and 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 you've done everything, right? Like the idea was that Dennis Allen was going to be inheriting a good situation. Okay, not a
continuity.
good
It's what we were
right. The
promised.
continuity, it was the whole thing, right? And then that season fell short. Then the next
Yep.
season, revamping the defensive coaching staff, going out and handpicking the quarterback, that season fell short. This season, you revamp the entire offensive coaching staff, with the exception of Clancy Brown, which was a good decision. I'm not saying that was a bad
Yep.
decision, but just editorially, they revamped the entire coaching staff with the exception of that spot. And then you get the highly sought after offensive coordinator. You bring the highly sought after wide zone system to New Orleans. I don't think that was a bad decision at all. But then you still can't capitalize on that. It doesn't look like this team is anywhere near scratching or sniffing, for that matter, a playoff spot, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know what's the next thing. You get all the players new bodies. Like, I don't understand. Like, what's the next thing that
$6
you
million
fix?
man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, what's the next thing that you do in that situation? To say, okay, you tried this, that didn't work, tried this, that didn't work. There's nothing left to try. Either this
Yeah.
is going to work or it's not. And if it's not going to work, then you have to make an adjustment. And you're going to have to do that over the course of the offseason.
Yeah. I have a theory, and I've
Mm-hmm.
been thinking about this for a good day or two. When we were at training camp, most of the guys that are dealing with injuries were injured in training camp. Now, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that issue carried over, but one of the things that I remember distinctly on the injury front is, and I'm pretty sure you pointed this out, is like when you have an injury to like a hamstring, you can overcompensate and then you run the
Yep.
risk of injuring something else. I think that we're seeing some of that because of stuff that happened in training camp. I could be wrong, but it's just a theory. But all the guys that have been injured and have got injured, it's maybe it's just a wild coincidence. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a good look, and if nothing else, right? Like, there's got to be some type of correlation between all that. It's so interesting to me that, like, I asked Dennis Allen today. He said a couple weeks ago that they were going to gather all the injury information and see if they can start to identify why these injuries are happening. And then I asked him about that again today, and he basically said that they can't pinpoint it to any one thing, which makes sense. All of these injuries are not going to be able to be pinpointed to one thing, but you have to learn something from it, considering the years of this issue that this organization has experienced. And I get that injuries are up around the NFL, but even now, like, that was an excuse that was used early, was, oh, well, injuries are up everywhere. Injuries are up everywhere. And then now tonight, like, even Dennis Allen is like, yeah, no, we've got a lot of them and everything. And so, like, there has to be something that you can take away from, like, you can't just have the injuries. You got to learn something from it and everything. And I think that's been one of the biggest issues, is that the Saints consistently run into the same issue over and over again. It's their inability to close out games. It's their inability to stop the run. It's their inability to tackle. It's their inability to stay healthy. I think it was Nick asked Alvin Kamara today, or last night, however it is that you want to look at it, asked him, does this feel like you're saying a lot of the same things that you said before? Is it just kind of copy and paste? And then Alvin Kamara was like, yeah, it is just kind of copy and paste. And so this is an organization that once looked us in the face and said, if you do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, that's a definition of insanity. Well, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing if not that?
Yeah. I mean, and look, the injury front, I understand, but the fact that it's taken 6-7 weeks for you to look into that, it just like it takes you 6-7 weeks to look at the fundamentals and talk about going to tackling. Like that's being reactive. You're not being proactive in this. You're
Yeah.
just reactive to the situation, and that doesn't work. And I'm telling you, like I don't think you can sell this product if you go another 9-8 season. I get it. They could rally, they could do all this stuff. There's a lot of season left in front of them. But if they continue to play this way in the past 2 games, they're going to be straight down the crapper. Like, they're going to get a top 10 draft pick, or they're just going to do good enough to where they're going to get just above a top 10 because they rallied and they still couldn't piece it together. And so it's just maddening, because you look at next year, and again, we got a game to kind of talk about a little bit. We're talking about the game without talking about the game. You know how we do that. But there's so many needs. Like, your trenches, which this team has said, as well as I do, they believe from building from the trenches within.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think your plan is kind of backfired a little bit. Like, you believe that, and when it's healthy, it's great. But we knew that this offensive line was going to last a full 17 games. So where's the disconnect? I mean, it's something that's just really amiss. And again, it's easy for us, it's easy for fans, it's easy for
Right.
everybody to just kind of say this, from what we see. But it's
Yeah.
just, if I'm Alvin, I am fed up. I think that
Sure.
I'm tired of losing. I'm tired of the same thing and putting my body on the line when I got a fractured hand and have other injuries, and I'm going out there and putting my body on the line when I could be at home with my daughter, like him,
Right.
for his perspective. So he's right. And then, as Alan said, that the players are going to get some time to go spend with their families and kind of come back, refocus, and all this other stuff. But man, look, some of the things we talked about in this game happened. We knew Bo Nix wasn't going to stay in the pocket long, and he
Mm-hmm.
took off. He gashed him in the run department. We knew that the Saints were going to have problems. You brought up the fact that Denver's great on the outside runs. They couldn't run on the outside. They knew they had the good pressure packages. They knew what to get from Vance Joseph's defense. I mean, they did everything by the book and then some to completely shut New Orleans offense down, and
Yeah.
then get them
Yeah.
on the other side too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we saw the pressure, right? Again, we're talking about this team being the second highest quarterback pressure rate in the NFL. You saw the pressure come through. The Denver Broncos, according to next gen stats, 14, no, 12, 12, 14. Hold on. I can double check it. I want to make sure I got the right number here. 14. I was right the first time. 14 quick pressures in this game. That means 14 pressures that got to Spencer Rattler within 2.5 seconds. Within 2.5 seconds.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely no time to do anything at all. We saw consistent blindside pressure. We saw consistent pressure up the middle. You're not going to win a game when you're just when you're just kind of, playing Matador. all the time on the offensive line. And I will say that I thought that Taliesin Fuanga had a remarkably concerning game in this one, the
Yeah.
first one that we've seen from. Now he's a rookie. He was going to have that game. He was bound to have it eventually. It just stinks that it happens on a game where you're also got 3 backup offensive linemen. And to your point, your 4th center, and then at for the second half, your 3rd left guard for the game as well. And so, or really 4th left guard, because Aliudo played a little bit of that
Yeah.
early on in the season. And so, I mean, like, it's unfortunate that those issues compounded. But man, like, what are you supposed to do with a rookie quarterback in that situation? I don't know. But I thought Vance Joseph and the Denver Broncos defense had exactly the game plan that they needed to be able to take advantage of the Saints situation in this one.
Yeah. And again, the proof is in the results, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get it. You can't look at this scoreboard and tell me that it was nothing short of just a disaster. And I mean, this team's lost and they're 2-5. And so it's disappointing, because this was supposed to be a special night for Drew
Right.
Brees, and it was, but that's how you kind of honor his legacy with this
That's
kind
a
of game and this
Yeah,
kind of
man.
showing. Like, that's a slap in the face. But um more on this game in just a minute. We're going to take a quick break and get a word from our sponsor in. Thanks for tuning in to Second and Saints, guys. Hey folks, John Hendricks here from Second and Saints. Look, we know it's the greatest time of the year again. Football's back, and it's here to stay until February. Look, over 1 million fans across 33 states got in a game last year by making picks on Underdog. Win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on your favorite player's stats, whether it's touchdowns, passing yards, and much more. Who doesn't like apps? And Underdog has a real easy app to use. But if you're like me, I like to use a website too. So when I want to look at more stats for a game or look at splits for Alvin Kamara, this is a good site for us to go check all of that information out. Making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com, sign up with promo code SecondSaints, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code SecondSaints, to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 or older, 19 and older in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 and older in Colorado for some games, 21 and older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. I love Underdog because it's so easy to use and it's so fast to get started and play. Sign up process is really smooth, and they have a slick mobile app. So what are you waiting for? Go check out Underdog today. Use that code SecondSaints, and we'll see you in the game. All right, back here, Second and Saints post-game show, breaking down this humiliating, demoralizing loss to the Broncos. Man, I guess from here, obviously we talk about injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Big one, Paulson Adebo, broken
Yeah, man.
femur. That's a hard one to see. And I know fans have gotten all over Paulson Adebo, but with Marshawn playing the way he is, quarterback's got to throw somewhere. And we know he's a physical guy, but he's in a contract year trying to make a play, a tackle. I mean, it didn't look good from the start when that happened,
Right.
and got the air cast treatment, get carted off. And it's a situation where he has to have immediate type of surgery tonight. And obviously, he's going to be gone for the season. I mean, that's
Yeah.
no mistake about that. Marshawn gets hurt with a hamstring injury. That's something to obviously keep tabs on. They just keep going through it with the injuries, man. It's just, but Adebo's a big one.
Yeah, that's a huge one. I think everybody's got to kind of focus on the pass interference penalties and the defensive holding penalties and stuff like that. But he was also the leading the team in interceptions with 3, leading the NFL in targets, so he was getting a ton of attention. But on top of that, he also was leading the NFL in forced incompletions, according to Pro Football Focus, with 10, which is exactly what he did last year as well. I believe he was second in the NFL amongst corners and pass breakups. So I think like that's a massive loss for you to lose Paulson Adebo, and the way that they lost him, like, just very upsetting. You know what I mean? To have that kind of a situation take place, and then the team has to turn around and say, okay, I guess we're gonna keep playing. You know what I mean? Like that can be tough.
Yeah.
Dennis Allen talking about kind of how demoralizing that can be for a team and all that. So that is that's really, really challenging. Now that's gonna put rookie Kool-Aid McKinstry
Yep.
in the game. The Saints spent the second round pick on him for a reason. John, you and I always talk about how like you're not going to have your top 3 corners every week and stuff like that.
Yep.
Now that's certainly the case for the Saints. So we'll see how Kool-Aid McKinstry is able to step up into that role. And then another rookie, Rico Payton, ended up getting called into action when Marshawn Lattimore went down with his injury as well.
Yeah, look, it's look, I don't want to say tonight had the preseason vibes, but you are getting a little bit of a look at the kind of the youth movement for this team in some aspects, not all of it, but look, it's hard when you have to deal with this many injuries, and I don't know that I've seen anything like this. I mean, COVID was
Ever.
one thing, but like physical injuries, and this person like Joanne Johnson went out at one point. Nick
Right.
Salivari's got a shoulder injury. He's already had a shoulder problem and had shoulder surgery last year or in the off season. So that's not good. So it's just like they can't catch a break. And Lucas Patrick was clearly just an emergency option tonight.
Right.
He had a ball cap on the sideline. There, they put Kyle Hergel out there, and so man, it's just something is a real miss. And I don't know if it's just bad gree or somebody's got the voodoo doll on it. I don't know, but like it is truly bizarre to be going through so many injuries, and you're just at week 7 of the season. And look,
Yeah.
Taysom Hill is probably back against the Chargers. Based off of what Dennis Allen said tonight, it doesn't sound like Derek Carr will be playing against the Chargers. So it's probably going to be Spencer Rattler, or is it going to be Jake Haener?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't blame the Saints in either direction. I want to be clear, but I do think you give Spencer Rattler another shot, especially if you're getting some
I
of
would
your
agree.
offensive line back. Like
Yeah,
if you're gonna have Lucas Patrick, if you're gonna have Cesar Ruiz, who performed like Lucas Patrick was one of the top 2 offensive linemen in the NFL when he started off this season. Cesar Ruiz had some ups and downs and things like that. Don't get me wrong, but if you can get 4 of your 5 starting offensive linemen out there, then yeah, and get your starting wide receiver and Chris Olave back. He's going to have a lot of time to clear concussion protocol, so I would expect that he'll be back next week as well. Then I think, yeah, you give Spencer Rattler another shot. I think people are going to highlight the Jake Haener drive at the end of the game. He looked poised, he looked comfortable going in that situation. I don't
yeah,
know how much I would say that Denver was really playing defense in terms of like, I mean, they were playing defense, but you know what I mean? Like how much were they
yeah.
giving? How soft was the coverage? All those other things. I have to go back to the tape to look at that first. But I don't think that the team all of a sudden got better at that time. I think it was just
Sure.
the situation more than anything else. And so, but based on that, I thought that Jake Haener also showed something to the coaching staff about like, hey, I'll take advantage of every opportunity that I'll get. And he went out there and he showed that. And I think that that's meaningful. And so I think
Yeah,
that's way more meaningful to me than anything else. And so that's why I say I wouldn't think the Saints were wrong by giving Jake Haener a run. But I just think that if you really are intent on getting a look at Spencer Rattler to figure out what you've got here, then you probably give him a third game with a healthier offense.
yeah, I would agree. I think it's got to be Rattler. It doesn't sound like Carr's going to be completely ready. Like I think that if it was push comes to shove and they needed to like roll him out and stuff, but I think they want to make sure he's really good to go and stuff. And so they
Mm-hmm.
got Chargers next, and they go at Carolina, and then I think it's what Cleveland and I don't
Cleveland,
know,
yeah,
Atlanta,
no,
and then
yeah,
Cleveland, or Cleveland and Atlanta. What they're back to back home games. I might have got them swapped, but
yeah.
look, it's it's struggle bus, man. It really is for this team. And look, I wonder why we didn't see more Kendre Miller. Like I thought he had some really good runs.
It was
He
one of
had
the
a pretty
bright
good
spots
game.
today.
Yeah, like there wasn't many, but like I like seeing Kendre Miller in there as a change of pace a little bit. I thought we thought that Jamal Williams might have got the inactive, but
Mm-hmm.
they took Jordan Mims and put him there. I thought Jamal had a couple of carries in there that showed some burst and stuff. Like they were able to run the football a little bit up the middle, but like the outside stuff, like some of the play calls, like that was just I don't know why you're running some of those types of things and maybe helping out your quarterback a little bit more. And again, that's why you learn. You're going to learn this stuff. I just hope they don't they learn their lesson and it's not too late, right? Like it just
Mm-hmm.
that's my biggest thing. And then defensively, man, just the Bo Nix stuff with the way he was running. You try to get a stop, and then the 3rd and 10 situation, they throw a pass to the sideline and get something out there. You get the almost sacks. Like it's just when it's broken, it's broke, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, it just is broken beyond belief. And this is 2 games now where this team just I think they're having obviously do some soul searching here, but man, there's a lot of frustration. I would say that.
Yeah.
And of course, rightfully so. Who wants to be 2-5 in the NFL when you had the 2-0 start? Do you buy what Dennis Allen said about I know that this team is capable because of the 2 games that they put out on tape, given now what we know about those opponents?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I don't know if I can buy that because it's not like the team's going to come out there and all of a sudden like get some healthy pieces back and then start putting 40 points up, right? Like a big part of the reason why they were so explosive over the course of those games were around Alvin Kamara and the run game, which defenses have already figured out, it feels like, and Rashid Shaheed and the ability to be able to stretch the field, and he's done for the season. And
Yep.
so, unless one of these other guys is going to step up and be Rashid Shaheed, unless the Saints are going to be able to revitalize their run game, I don't know how they can be that again. You know what I mean? Like that. It's Carolina and Dallas, and they aren't the greatest opponents. We just watched Dallas get blown out again
Yeah.
this past weekend, and so I don't know that I do buy it that the Saints are there. I do buy that there's good football there. I
Mhm.
don't buy that the first 2 weeks are who they actually are, and they're just
Oh, no.
buried under this, collection of other issues.
Yeah, and look, the whole injury front, like I worked retail. Hope is not a business strategy. You do
Right.
not go into a business and say, "Well, I hope things get better." Like you
Hmm.
got to do things that actually put you in a position to win and succeed and all this other stuff. And look, they're going to have their work cut out for them against the Chargers, right? Like I mean, this
Oh
is
yeah.
just a thing where it's not going to get easier. Like you got the Chargers and then the Panthers are getting some of their guys back, and then they got Andy Dalton lead the helm. Like it's not gonna be all of a sudden where you say, well, just because you're playing Los Angeles, or just because you're gonna play Cleveland, or just play Carolina, like they could get some of those wins, but based off of the performances, I just don't see it. I just don't know if they're gonna be able to find themselves and just be able to rally. And look, Demario Davis again, we were able to talk to a lot of the leaders afterwards in the locker room, and he
Hmm.
said that they've been through many storms, and you're going to go through a storm, and the storm's going to end at some point, and they just got to be able to continue to keep putting in the work and stuff. And I mean, at this point, it's just everything has to go right for this team to be able to produce a win. That's
Yeah,
just how it is.
that's been one of their biggest issues so far is their inability to manage adversity, or what looks like an inability to manage adversity. Not Let me not call it that if it's not actually that, but that's what it certainly feels like.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you just make a team more resilient, how you generate that mentality and stuff like that. This team plays with an admirable culture amongst the players of sort of selflessness, right? Wanting to do things that will support the other player and making everything about everyone else. It's not just about them. They don't care about their individual accolades. They don't care about the stats they get, things like that. They care about winning football games. Um, but the issue is that they're not winning football games. And so you kind of just have to figure out how you're going to evaluate where you are when it comes to all those situations. And so I think that's really hard to build off of. It's hard to get any momentum out of a 5-game losing streak. And then you look at Dennis Allen's track record, you look at the New Orleans Saints track record over the course of the last couple of seasons, and are they going to win more than 3 games in a row for the first time in this tenure out of
No.
nowhere? Like I don't know how you do that, and unless you're going to go on some type of a run, it's going to be really hard to catch up and combat the ground that you've lost. And so I don't know. It's hard for me to buy any of that. And then when you have a defense that 2 weeks, John, within 4 days of one another, or excuse me, within 5 days of one another, the New Orleans Saints have surrendered over 500 yards rushing.
Yeah. For a defensive coach team,
Right.
does not make sense. I I don't I just it's just crazy. I'm gonna tell you what's gonna end up happening. They're gonna figure something out, and they're gonna do this maddening thing where they're gonna probably end up going like 5-2 over the next 7 weeks. I'd call me crazy. I haven't taken my meds tonight, but they might probably do this thing where they go 5-2 to get back to 7-7, and then those last 3 games will be what ends up like getting somebody fired. I guess I just feel like they're going to find a way to probably try to get some wins together. I don't think it's going to be a winning streak. I think they might like win two, lose one, win
Yeah.
two, lose one, like, you know, just that type of thing. And I don't know the opponents, but it's obviously going to start with Los Angeles next weekend. And again, we're in week 8 and we're going to call this a must-win game. You called this a must-win game for this one tonight. And, you know, a win would have went a long way for you, but it didn't. And then the way you lost was just embarrassing on national
Yeah.
TV. I mean, when you got people ridiculing you for calling a timeout just to go take a knee before the half, like that is just the worst. You know
And
what
the
I
fact that
mean?
no one knows where the timeout came from is the other thing
Yes.
that's so wild to me. It's like, what do you mean? Like, of course, like,
Unless they don't want to out somebody, but that is a bad
yeah,
look. I'm
that's
just telling
probably
you.
what it is. You're right. They're probably just trying to like not pin that on somebody or whatever. But like,
Yeah.
it is just a frustrating thing because again, these are all things that like shouldn't be the case. Like, you shouldn't have a situation where you're calling a timeout before you go out there to kneel. You also shouldn't be
Or
trying to
check downs.
right for 16 seconds on the clock, getting your running back blown up and everything like that. Like,
Right.
just take the knee, go to the locker room and everything. You're not going to do anything. Like, get out of here. Like, go to the
Mhm.
locker room, reset, and come back for the second half and everything. And it's just, I don't know. Like, I don't disagree with the idea of believing in yourself and going out there and trying to do something. But after that first play, it should have been enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you run the risk of getting somebody hurt and then going into the locker room with nothing and then coming out with a hurt player. And who knows? Maybe that's what happened with Nick Saldiveri. You know what I mean? We don't know. And so there's like little things like that. There was a couple of other kind of like coaching things that were kind of strange throughout this one and stuff. And I don't know. I just think that the biggest story coming out of this game is that like this team is just feels lost, man. Like, just
Yeah.
absolutely lost. I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah. Lost and chaos. Like that's
Hmm.
practically what everything is. It's chaos and everybody's lost. Like it's just I don't know. Like I'm like dumbfounded in some aspects of what I've seen because I thought when we saw this team in training camp, like I thought we saw a team that felt like they knew who they were, right? Like I felt like they had the confidence that both sides were doing their things, all this stuff. We saw some semblances of things. Like it was, you know, again, going into this season, our biggest concern was Trevor Penning.
Right.
And again, like we said, he's been whispers playing pretty well. You know, but you know, like you said, Talese Fuanga, he looked like a rookie tonight. And of course,
Yeah.
I
It's gonna
mean, that's
happen.
it's going to happen. He wasn't going to be perfect the whole time, but you know, he's got to learn just like everybody else. But
Yeah.
very
I
disappointing, very concerning. Yep.
yeah. I think what we ended up seeing, John, during training camp, thinking about what you just said about like we saw a team, we thought that like they knew who they were. I think what we actually saw was a team that knew who they wanted to be.
Sure.
And
Woo.
saw and really saw the path to being that team.
Mm,
And then the moment that kind of slipped out of their grasp, I think it just slipped out of their grasp.
yeah.
And so I think like the thing that I'll commend them with is that they still have the ability to see the team that they want to be. I think that they still very much know what that is because they've been there, they've done it to an extent, and all those other things, kind of like what DA was saying. Um, and look, I'm just trying to be fair, right? Like
Sure.
I'll
Yeah.
always be honest. I'll always be all these other things, but above all else, I also want to be fair. I think that's what we saw. I think we saw a team that knew what it is that they wanted to be, what they could
Yep.
be. I just think that they've learned that maybe it's not who they are.
Yeah. And I'm sure like everybody in that locker room is probably thinking that same thing is like,
Just as
man,
baffled. Hmm.
we were supposed to be this team, we're supposed to be that team. And, you know, again, I don't know that the vibe of the locker room is like, you know, where everybody's tearing at each other's throats and stuff. But again, I you keep on this path, it's gonna come out. You know what I mean? Like it's
Hmm.
just gonna come out. And you know, accountability's got to come somewhere, right? Like I just don't think you can keep letting this stuff happen and then just not expecting anybody to be held accountable. Like something
Right.
needs to happen. And you know, I just don't know if that's going to happen right now is with this team. And you know, it's been time for a change, like beyond time for some type of change. I just don't know if they're going to pull the trigger on it. And
Yeah.
it's tough because there's so much stuff that could be good for this team. They could be like they do have good players. They do have a lot of things. Of course, if they get in or the players back from injuries, like they could maybe make a run at it, but their problems go way beyond just a few players. Like that's
Yeah.
just really where they're at right now. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And even if they were to do it, like the issue is that like you make that decision during this season and you're not going to get better. You know what I mean? Like making a decision of a coaching change is very rarely going to all of a sudden make your team better. Like you might get the one
sure.
game bump kind of a thing or whatever. And I know people are going to say, "Oh, well,
Yeah.
the Jets just did it. Okay, well, let's see what the Jets actually are by the time that it's all said and done." And everything
Yeah.
like that. Because they said like a lot of people said the same thing last year about coordinator changes and coaching changes and stuff like that. And like the majority of those situations, all but maybe one, things didn't get better
Yeah.
when they did that. So I understand the Saints' decision to probably not, or what I expect will be the Saints' decision to not make that change during the season, because what do you gain, right? All that you do is set your team into turmoil and all these other things. Especially when you want to evaluate the young players that are on the roster, which I think is what is about to become the most important thing that this team can do moving forward, is to begin to evaluate its roster. Changing a bunch of stuff isn't going to give you an accurate, approximation of what you've got. You know what I mean? So you kind of have to be able to pull that together and keep that together as best as you can.
Yeah, and they're gonna maintain the illusion that everything's okay. Like, I mean, it's
Oh,
just gonna
sure.
be that
Yeah.
way. Like, but
Did the same
again,
thing
I
with Pete
think
Carmichael all year last year. Oh yeah, no, that's like we feel really good, and then boom, gone. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So like
right.
it happens, man. Like it's part of the
Mhm.
game.
It is. It is.
You gotta stand by your
Well,
guys.
yeah, I'd say give out. No, I don't even know about game balls from this game.
I
I
I
just I maybe like I think there's some individual performances. Like I was encouraged by what I saw from Kendra Miller. I was encouraged by what I
mm-hmm.
saw from Jermaine Jackson.
Agreed.
Offensively, um, I don't know if you got game balls. Let's hear
Yeah,
him because
the
I can't. I'm
those two,
struggling. Cedric
the
Wilson Jr. Maybe I guess because he pulled up late.
yeah,
I don't know,
yeah,
but
picked up late at that point. But
oof.
those two for sure, Kendra as well as Jermaine Jackson. And then I'll throw in Anthony Orgy too. I thought Anthony Orgy came to play today.
Defensively, yeah, I think he
Defensively, I
did.
thought
I
he
think
came to play.
yeah, he had a couple of tackles for loss. I think he is pretty good on that aspect. So, yeah, but it was
Well, that's it.
bad, dog. Randy
That's
Jackson, it
it.
was bad,
Yeah,
dog.
bad dog. Bad
So,
dog.
I don't know. This is going to be tough one to swallow for
Oh,
this loss. I mean, golly, it's what you had epiphany.
Drew Brees. Got to give Drew Brees a game ball.
Oh yeah. The most
Came
energy
running
of the
out the
night
tunnel.
came from Drew Brees. Yes, when it
Yeah.
shouldn't have came from Drew Brees. So I saw JJ Watts tweeting. He's like, "This is how they honor Drew Brees in this game." I'm like, ooh,
Yeah. JJ,
he's not wrong.
you don't know a thing yet, man. Like
Yeah.
you gotta know when he showed up for the Buffalo game years ago, when he showed up for what was the game? What was the other one that he showed up for? Wasn't it
Oh
earlier
man,
this
there's a
season?
couple of them. Yeah, I think there's one earlier this season, and then he's been to a couple. Like I don't know if they've actually won a game since he's
Oh,
been
the
in prime
Philly
time.
one. Was it the Philly game that he was at earlier this year?
I think it was Philly. They had a Dallas game that he went to. I think
That's right. Yeah.
as another one, but
Yeah.
yeah, the good
Always
news is
embarrassing Drew in front of company.
yeah, now what I think Dennis Allen's 1-7 in prime time now.
Oof.
With the Saints, I think it was 1-6. And the good news is they don't have a prime time game for like 2 months, so they're
Right.
not playing again until Monday night against the Packers, which assuming that sticks, but
Oof.
and that's right before Christmas, so that could ruin your Christmas too. So hey, it's all that fun stuff. Man, I can't believe over 400 people are tuning into us right now. I guess you guys aren't wanting to sleep or y'all just mad,
2
upset, something.
a.m.
Who knows?
Dang.
That's 2 a.m. over here on a Friday morning. But hey, thanks for sticking with us and all that stuff as we wrap up and stuff. Ross, what's coming up on Locked On and LouisianaSports.net?
Yeah, so I did my post game show, just taking a look at like options, reality versus fantasy, all that other stuff. And then tomorrow I'll do another episode. So we're gonna kind of go by the numbers, which I'll have an accompanying article with. I typically take like 10 of the most important numbers from the game that kind of help to tell the story of it. These will be very sad numbers by the time it's all said and done, but I will go through those. And then I'll do a little film study as well. I really am curious about like where the breakdown was in terms of the pressure, just pressure in this game. And so I want to get a look at where that was and what contributed to that over the offensive side. So dive into all that, and then and I'm going to take me some Saturday and Sunday. I'm going to go to a pumpkin patch. And I'm just gonna enjoy fall because it's finally here.
Yes.
What about
Yes.
you, man?
The
What you got over at
gumbo
yeah?
will be flowing,
Yes,
like we said
gumbo on
earlier.
Saturday,
Yes.
100%.
Everybody.
Uh,
Yes. Potato salad goes in gumbo. I said it.
potato salad does go on gumbo. It does go on gumbo. I'm with you. I agree. What you got coming up over at Saints News Network, man?
Oh man, we're gonna put a bow on this game really quickly. So we're gonna look obviously snap counts and stuff. I already wrote my post game column, so that was just go on Saints News Network because I mean it's pretty blatantly honest about they need to
Yeah,
change, but I
same.
don't think it's coming. You know what I mean? So that's just
Yeah,
tough. And then of course a couple other things to wrap up this week, and then I'm gonna enjoy the time as well and such. So it'll be a good time, and hopefully next week, or maybe they find the team within this mini bye. They got 10 days of rest. Some of the players are going to be at the facility doing some rehab this weekend. And, they're going to be in Monday and all that stuff. So they'll have some extra time to think about some stuff. But I don't know if it's going to do any good. And it's on
yeah,
them to show it. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
at this point, I don't know where you could go on the schedule and say, oh, they're going to win this game. They're going to win this game. You can circle them. At this point, they got to just go show up for a game at this point. Like, they just haven't done it in the past couple of games. So
Yeah,
tough, man. All right, guys. Well, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Again, I can't believe all you guys are still up and hanging with us and all that. I
we
mean,
appreciate it.
yeah, the only reason why we'll end is because I think both of us probably need some crash time. So, sleep and all that fun stuff. But look, thanks for tuning in to us. We really do appreciate it. You can follow Ross at LouisianaSports.net and Locked On Saints. You can also check me out, Saints News Network, Sports Illustrated, all that fun stuff. And of course, all the stuff here on Second and Saints. Thanks so much. Y'all have a good night's sleep. Or if you're listening to a different time, have a good rest of the day and all that good stuff. We will talk at you very soon. Have a good one, guys. Enjoy the weekend while you can because the Saints can't ruin it. Have a good one.
Love you.